Listen to me carefully. I am a woman drowning in debt, living alone in a house that was falling apart. One cold morning, I made a decision. A simple decision. I posted a small advertisement online. Room available, short stay only. 2 days later, a stranger knocked on my door. My name is Sova. I have lived in London for 34 years, and for the first time in my life, this city feels like a heavy stone sitting on my chest. I cannot carry it anymore. I am a teacher. Every morning I stand in front of young faces. They look at me with big, hopeful eyes. They wait for me to say something that matters. I try to give them hope. I try to show them a future. But honestly, that future feels far away, even from me. I give them everything I have, my energy, my patience, my knowledge. But this city takes more than it gives. My salary is small, too small for a city like London. In this place, being poor is not just about having no money. It is a quiet fear that lives deep inside your bones. It hums all day. It hums all night. And it never, ever stops. Money is like a ghost in my house. I hear about it, I plan for it, I wait for it, but I never see it stay long enough to help. My husband Caspel is a good man, a kind and honest man, but life has pushed him far away from me. He works in a small town many hours from here. His job keeps him away from home for weeks at a time. He sends money when he can, crumpled bills, small checks. They carry the weight of his sweat and his tiredness. But it is never enough. The bills keep rising like water around me, and I am standing on my toes, just trying to keep my head above the surface. Most nights the house is empty and painfully quiet. I live here alone. I move through the rooms like a shadow, without purpose, without sound. I clean floors that are already clean. I cook food for one person. I sit at a table that was built for a family. The only sound is the clock in the hallway. Tick, tick, tick. It reminds me every second of the life I am not living. I want a child. I want to hear small feet running across the floor. I want to feel a tiny warm hand holding mine. But a child costs money. Money we simply do not have. That thought sits in my chest like a bruise, a deep, painful bruise, and every time I feel too much, I press on it. The house itself is tired, old and tired. The roof has given up fighting the rain. Water comes in through small cracks, slow and steady, drip after drip. I catch the water in plastic buckets placed on the floor. The stove does not always work. Some nights it refuses to turn on at all. So I eat cold bread alone in the dark. In the kitchen, there is a drawer. Inside that drawer, I hide the letters printed in red ink. Final warnings, threats to cut off the electricity and gas. I do not tell Caspel about them. He is already carrying the weight of 2 lives on his tired shoulders. I cannot add my failures to his pain. One morning, the air was very cold, colder than usual. The weight of the bills felt heavier than ever before. I was sitting at the kitchen table holding a cup of tea that had gone cold in my hands. I was reading the newspaper, not really paying attention. My eyes moved away from the big, sad headlines and slowly landed on the small advertisements in the back pages. Rooms for rent, short stays, quick cash. The idea began to grow inside my mind. Quiet at first, then louder and louder, like a weed pushing through cracked ground. Maybe it was dangerous, but hunger and debt felt more dangerous. That afternoon, my hands would not stop shaking. I picked up a pen and wrote a small notice. Room available, quiet home, short stay only. I posted it online and felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. I told myself it was the smart thing to do. I told myself it was temporary, just enough to fix the roof, just enough to clear the chore of those terrible red letters. I did not stop to think about what it really meant to let a stranger into our home. I only thought about surviving. I only thought about the red ink. 2 days later, the knock came. He stood at the door like he had been shaped from the very fog of the city. His name was Mr. Dravenik. He wore a suit that was old but carefully cleaned. He carried a small leather bag close to his body. He spoke in a calm, measured voice, the kind of voice that makes you stop and listen. He smiled often, but his smile never quite reached his eyes. There was something hollow behind them. He said he was a businessman, just passing through London. He needed a quiet place to rest. 2 nights, that was all he asked for. "I can pay double your price," he said. His voice was smooth, almost too smooth, like oil on water. I value my privacy very much. Hotels are too noisy and too intrusive for my taste. Double. That single word echoed in my head like a bell. Double meant the roof could finally be fixed. Double meant the stove could be repaired. Double meant I could breathe again, even if just for a while. I did not ask him what kind of work he did. I did not ask why he needed so much privacy. I did not think about Caspel, who would have been horrified at the thought of a stranger sleeping under our roof. I only thought about the relief. So, I said yes. He moved in that same evening. He was like a ghost. He walked straight upstairs without a word and locked the bedroom door with a soft but firm click. The house, which had felt so painfully empty for so long, suddenly felt full, crowded, watched. I sat alone in the kitchen, listening carefully. I heard him moving above me, slow, careful steps, back and forth, over and over again, like a man circling the walls of a cage. That first night, I did not sleep. I lay in my bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, listening to every breath the house made. Around midnight, I heard the front door creak open and then gently shut. I crept to the window and watched a dark figure step into the shadows of the empty street and disappear. He did not return until the sky started to turn a pale, tired gray. His footsteps were slower then, much heavier. The next day, the house was strangely, unnervingly still. Mr. Dravenik did not come down for breakfast. He did not appear for tea. The curtains in his room stayed tightly closed, blocking out every bit of the weak London sunlight. I spent the whole day on edge, jumping at every tiny sound the house made. When evening finally came, I caught a glimpse of him in the hallway. He was heading back upstairs. His long coat was pulled tight around his body. I looked down at his feet and noticed dark, wet stains on the leather of his shoes. "The streets are muddy tonight," I said, trying to sound calm. My voice came out thin and strange, even to my own ears. He did not look at me. He simply nodded once and continued slowly up the stairs. I told myself it was just mud. London is a dirty city. A man walking the streets at night is bound to get his shoes dirty. I chose to believe the comfortable lie because the truth was far too frightening to look at directly. The second night was much worse. The heavy silence of the house shattered. I heard metal scraping hard against wood. It sounded like furniture being shoved across the floor, or perhaps something being pried open with force. Then came a dull, rhythmic thudding that went on for hours without stopping. I sat frozen in my chair by the lamp, clutching a cold iron poker from the fireplace with white knuckles. I could not move. I could not call out. Fear, a fear I could not even name, filled every corner of the dark room. I was a prisoner in my own home, waiting desperately for a morning that felt like it would never arrive. Before the very first light of dawn touched the rooftops, I heard him leave. There was no goodbye, no thank you, no requests for change from the generous amount of money he had placed on the hall table. He simply vanished into the morning fog, like smoke. He left the front door slightly open behind him. I waited until the sun was high and bright before I dared to go upstairs. The air in the hallway felt thick and charged, heavy with something I could not explain. When I slowly opened the door to his room, the smell hit me first. Sharp, metallic, mixed with something old and sour that turned my stomach. It was the smell of a place where something deeply wrong had happened. The room was stripped completely bare. The bedsheets were gone. He either took them or destroyed them entirely. The floorboards near the far wall were deeply scratched, long, ugly marks, as if something heavy had been dragged across them over and over. I threw the window open as wide as it would go. I gasped for the cold, smoky London air, trying to push his presence out of the room, out of my lungs. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a small trapped bird fighting to be free. That same afternoon, the front door opened again. For one terrible, ice-cold moment, I thought Mr. Dravenick had returned. But it was Caspel, my husband. He had come home early. His face was deeply lined with exhaustion from his long journey, but his eyes held a soft, genuine relief at being home. He dropped his heavy bags on the floor. He walked toward me to hold me, but then he stopped completely. He lifted his head and sniffed the air. His eyebrows came together slowly. "What is that smell, Sova?" he asked, his voice low and careful. "And why is the guest room door standing wide open?" The weight of the secret became too much. I broke apart. I told him everything: the bills, the red letters, the advertisement, the man with the calm, hollow smile, and the dark stains on his shoes. I showed him the money, the double payment that was supposed to fix our broken life. As I spoke, I watched the light slowly die in my husband's eyes. It was not anger that replaced it, not at first. It was a deep, hollow fear. He looked at me as if I were a complete stranger, as if the woman he loved had been quietly replaced by someone he did not recognize at all. "You let a man into our home," he whispered. "A man you did not know, for money." Before he could say another word, there was a loud, heavy pounding at the front door. Not a polite knock, but a strong, commanding knock, the kind that comes from the law. 2 police officers stood on our small porch. Their faces were grim and serious. They asked if a man matching Mr. Dravenick's description had stayed in our house. They told us he was connected to a series of violent crimes in the neighboring area. The very kind of crimes that matched the terrible sounds I had heard through the ceiling in the night. They pushed past us and went directly upstairs. They worked quickly and without emotion. They dusted the room for fingerprints. They examined every dark corner of the space I had desperately tried to air out. They did not look at me. They did not offer a single word of comfort. I was merely a witness to my own devastating judgment. Beneath the deeply scratched floorboards, they found things I had not seen. Small, hidden traces of evidence that confirmed their worst suspicions. When the police finally left our house, they took the double payment with them. It was evidence now, not salvation. The silence that filled the house afterward was absolutely crushing. Caspel did not yell. He did not throw anything. He simply sat down at the kitchen table and stared quietly at the open drawer where I had hidden all those red ink letters. That night, for the very first time in our marriage, he did not sleep in our bed. He lay on the narrow sofa in the living room, wrapped in a thin blanket, his back turned firmly to the room. When morning came, I found him standing by the door, packing his bag. "I cannot stay here, Sova," he said. His voice was flat, completely empty of feeling. This house was the only place in the whole world where I felt safe. The only place I believed was truly ours alone. And you sold that safety for a few pounds. "I did it for us," I pleaded, my voice breaking. The tears finally came hot and heavy down my face. "I did it so we could keep the house, so we could fix the roof, so we could survive." "The roof is just wood and stone," he replied quietly, pausing with his hand on the door. "But trust is something else entirely. You opened the door and let the whole world walk in. And now, I do not know how to shut it again." He left without another word. The soft click of the latch sounded like the final sentence at the end of our story together. Now the house is silent once more. The money is gone, taken away by the police as evidence. The roof still leaks. The water still drips steadily into the same old plastic buckets. A slow, sad rhythm that reminds me constantly of what I have done. The stove still refuses to light. I sit by the lamp each night and listen to the clock in the hallway, but the sound has changed. It no longer feels like it is counting towards something better. It feels like a dirge, a slow, mournful song for something that has died. Sometimes when the wind catches the edges of the roof or the old house settles deeper into the cold earth beneath it, I hear footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I know there is no one there. I know Mr. Dravenik is long gone, perhaps caught by the police or hiding somewhere in another desperate woman's home behind another locked door. But the house remembers him. It remembers the deep scratches on the floor. It remembers the sharp, metallic smell that hung in the air like a warning I arrived too late to hear. I am still alive. I still walk to the school each morning and stand before those young, hopeful faces. I still teach them about hope and the future. But I return each evening to a home that no longer feels like mine. I am a ghost living in a haunted house, surrounded by the echoes of one single, desperate decision. I wanted to save our life. I wanted to protect what we had built together. But in my desperation, I opened the door and invited the very thing that tore it all apart. And all it took was a small advertisement and a knock on the door. Thanks for listening to my story. If you liked it, hit that subscribe button for Learn English by Stories. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from.